Okay, welcome to Inside News. I'm Mike Jones, and we are joined tonight by Dale Matthews on the phone. Hello, Dale. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and I am joining you on location from Three Rivers Medical Center.
Wow, what are you doing there?
Well, I'm looking out the window. It's a nice day, and I'm up in the treetops looking out over the valley. I've got this thing that a number of people have in the area that's sapping their energy, and it's called too much politics. It's sapping their energy, and so I made it on down here today, and they've got some suggestions of what they'd like me to do in my particular situation, and so I'm following their advice like any good patient should do.
Uh-huh. Well, that sounds good. So, Dale, we got a couple of things here. We have some video from last week's weekly business session where Simon and Cheryl are talking about their the potential of passing or making a change in land use rules to accommodate marijuana grows inside buildings that are on commercial property is essentially what it breaks down to, and their conflict of interest in that department. And then we also have some video, a report that KOBI did about Keith Heck and his failure to report on some of his campaign donations. Which one of those would you like to go with first?
I'd say go with Keith Heck, and remember when you're listening to this, everybody, that no matter what the reporter says, this is not Keith Heck's third term. It's he's been in for 3.5 years. It is his first and last term as a commissioner. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, here we go.
Western County Commissioner Keith Heck is under fire tonight after a complaint is filed with the Secretary of State's office against him.
The complaint alleges Commissioner Heck didn't report 2 donations to his re-election campaign. NBC5's Nicole Stein is live in our Medford newsroom with the details. Nicole?
James Rafferty is a leader of War for a Constitutional Government Political Action Committee. Part of what they do is follow candidates and educate voters. That's why he says when he noticed Commissioner Keith Heck hadn't filed a report for $3,500 of donations from Coalition for a Healthy Oregon to his campaign, he says he had to do something about it.
Being a citizen and being into politics a little bit myself, you know, we all need to be playing on a fair playing field and an even playing field.
Rafferty, who's running for Josephine County Clerk, filed the complaint with the Secretary of State's office. This week, they mailed a letter to Commissioner Heck, who is seeking his 3rd term in office, to give him a chance to respond. Commissioner Heck told me this afternoon over the phone that mistakes can happen, but he isn't yet aware of the complaint. Live in the newsroom, Nicole Stein, NBC5 News.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, now they've been in a lot of trouble already, and you would think that being in so much trouble with the state, with the Secretary of State's office, with the OGEC, they keep denying that anything is happening at all. What's the matter with everybody? And they're not slowing down. They're not paying attention to the law. It's a mystery to me. Well, as Keith Heck has said in the past, I know we're breaking the law, and I don't care.
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing about this is that what sort of a cue would you take from people filing complaints against you or complaining about your ethics, and there is no accountability that ever comes to you? After a while, you might think that you'd become fearless, or have no fear of any repercussion, and you would just continue to do whatever it is that you want to do, and not be deterred by people thinking that there's something wrong with what you're doing, because you know you're never going to have to be held to account for it.
The strangest part about this of all is that he's been warned several times by a number of different people, including the state, don't do this kind of thing. And the rules are crystal clear. not like you need a lawyer to tell you what the rules are. And these rules have been around for decades about how you're supposed to identify above a certain amount. Now, other candidates are being very careful and saying, okay, once it reaches a certain level, even when you're talking about putting in your voter's pamphlet statement, that be careful, because past a certain point, you must report it. There's a very good reason for this. So it's a, what do you do with people? For example, you may remember that when the Oregon Government Ethics Commission said, well, yeah, these guys are guilty. No, we're not. No, we're not. They never said that. And Cheryl Walker's holding up her fingers and air quotes. Well, some investigator says that they're looking into it. That was never the truth. So the way it's happening with Keith and the way it's happening with the other two commissioners is they're looking us straight in the eye and saying, we've done absolutely nothing wrong. You're totally wrong. And it's a lie. Sorry. There's no other way to put it.
So Dale, you know, this violation that they're talking about, you know, his excuse there, or the gal's relayed excuse was, you know, anybody can make mistakes. You know, what do you think about that? Do you think that, and really, what is the harm in this situation? He forgot to file the report.
That's an awful lot of money to be saying that it's just a mistake.
Oh.
This is not this guy's first rodeo, right? And even though the TV station got it wrong about how long he's been in office, he had to go through all this before. So, and the commissioners have made it very clear to everybody. We know what the rules are. We know what the rules are. Still, the OGEC gave them a letter of education after they said they know what the rules are. So it's one of those things where you think, well, now, wait a minute. Just how confused can these guys be? Really, how confused can they be? You have to come to the conclusion either that they're being purposely confused or they just don't care.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's a possibility. Now, so, you know, as you're so fond of saying, conspiracy or lunkheads, you would err on the side of lunkhead. Do you think that, and you know, we've mentioned on a number of occasions that perhaps Keith Heck doesn't realize what room he's in and that he's at home in the bathtub. Is he running his own campaign here, or is someone else doing the paperwork for him? He's obviously being funded by other people, but is he the one that is in charge of filing the paperwork? You know, with whom does this accountability lie?
Well, it must, I can say from experience, it must lie with the commissioner candidate. There are times when I've talked with other candidates just about the placement of their signs, because there are illegal places to put signs. Oh, they're not very happy about it. But I said, look, there's an easy solution to this. Just obey the law. The history has been with this fellow and with the other two that they don't wish to obey the law. They just, I've said lots of times, it's an imperial leadership, and they feel they're above all that, and there's no need for them to do so. And when you look at the ramifications, Cheryl is not going to run again, and Simon Hare is much more interested in what's happening on a state level. He's already announced that this is going to be his last time. I believe that Keith's main impetus here is to get that 5th year in, year number 5, so he gets PERS. So, you know, what Simon Hare did before wasn't illegal about PERS, but he did run the first time saying, I'm not going to take PERS, I'm not going to take it. Mm-hmm. And then when he ran the second time, and as soon as he got elected, he asked the other commissioners if he could please have PERS retroactively. What? Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. See, there's a problem with these people. And not only are they not recognizing any authority of law, they're certainly not paying any attention to what the public thinks. I don't think that they care. This is a really rock simple thing. And we're not talking about being over by $15. We're talking about it's a lot of money. and you were required to do this, and it's always been the case. For the history of people who are alive today in this state, that's just simply not the way to do things. So the idea of claiming again that he doesn't understand, that he's a doddering old fool, well, no, I don't believe that.
Well, I don't think he's trying to make that excuse. That wouldn't bode well for his campaign. But okay, so the importance of this, is this the basis of the importance here, that you need to be able to track who is donating to whom, or is it that they need to know that this amount was donated to you so that you're not pocketing that money and spending it on Jimmy's hamburgers?
Both of those are true. Both of those are true. And the bottom line on all this is they're going, oh, well, it means nothing. It means nothing. He's running an illegal campaign. This is not good. But I've come to sort of expect this from these guys.
So ultimately, if they decided to come, down on his head about this, what sort of penalty would there be?
Probably a letter of education.
Boy,
yeah.
You wonder, see, there's all kinds of accountability for you. If you don't pay your property tax, they're going to take your house and sell it out from under you. But if you are inside government and you make some sort of an ethical faux pas, then you get a letter of education. And I'm assuming that there's some sort of variability to that, but I wonder to what extent. And well,
when we caught Cheryl Walker, it was at a meeting a couple of years ago, and she had given us all a long lecture about how you're not supposed to be advocating for any measure or any candidate during once the ballots were out there. Okay, this is not good. And then after just a couple of minutes, she turned right around and started doing the same thing herself, right there in front of us, and we got it on tape. So I sent that tape along with a complaint letter to the state. Now, I didn't really think the state was going to do anything, but I sent them that letter off to the state, and they received it. And I said, so this is illegal, right? Oh, yeah, that's illegal, and you caught them red-handed. I said, so what are you going to do about it? Well, we're really not quite sure if we're going to do anything at all. I said, now, wait a minute. You guys are always laughing at us up there. And now we've done everything that citizens can possibly do to set this straight, and you're not going to obey your own law?
Yeah. Well, that's because they don't really care either. I just think that there's sort of a kinship or a brotherhood amongst government workers. It's kind of like being in the same union, that you're just not going to do bad things to those people. And I mean, it's odd to have, if that familial situation exists, then in what position is somebody in the same family, so to speak, to make a judgment as to the guilt or innocence of someone else in that same family?
That's right. And that's why from the beginning, from the get-go on this, if we're going to be reformers of the system, we've got two choices. Don't even try to reform the system, because nobody's going to help you. Or the other is, we're on our own, and we're going to encounter 4 years of opposition at least from people who don't want to reform the system.
Right.
It doesn't matter to them what the law says. It doesn't mean you have to obey every tiny little law, but these are big, big transgressions. He's running an illegal campaign. And, I've just now come to the conclusion over this period of time, that's who he is. That's who all three of them are. This is why I often say we really need to clear this out and start over again. And it's been building up like this for generations. The big thing that is the problem now is that even beyond breaking the law and then saying we're not breaking the law, and then it turned out when they said that, they knew that they had been breaking the law, that's bad. That's very bad. But the big thing is now there are plenty of people who say, you know what, I'm tired of listening to the voters. The city council did this. tired of listening to the voters. We're no longer going to listen to them, and we're just going to impose this stuff on them.
Well, a part of arrogance is entitlement, and that entitlement that the laws or rules do not apply to you, and but the thing is that the government and the ethics arm, accountability arm of state government is complicit. Really,
that's right.
In that entitlement, in that arrogance, and so you're not going to be able to ultimately hold these people accountable. The only way that you can do it is at the ballot box, or at the ballot box, one way or the other, whether it's a recall or an election.
Now, in this particular case, Wally Hicks, our county legal counsel, would not get involved. In my opinion, he should not be involved, because this is Keith Heck's private campaign to run. But in the past, what's happened with Wally Hicks is, when we first started out finding these things, I mentioned to him before he even ran, and then was mentioning it to him as it was happening. And now we're at the point where he no longer shares information with citizens. He just says, no, they're not doing anything wrong. And he's sitting in the meeting with them when they're breaking the law. All this stuff through the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, the only reason they're not pursuing him is because he's a lawyer. Well, now he's an elected lawyer, and the only one in the whole state that does this. And it's very clear what the law says. So this is a problem that's getting bigger instead of smaller. Now, we've got a choice, as I said before. Our choice is, we can go, well, boys will be boys. Just let them do whatever they want to. Or we can put our foot down and say, no, we're not going to allow this. And even if no help is coming from the state at all, we don't have to allow it. As regular folks, we don't have to allow any of this.
Okay.
We can simply say, no, we're not going to do it that way. And no matter how the state comes down, we're on our own. And we're no longer going to let that happen.
Right. You say no longer going to let it happen. What's the vehicle for that?
The vehicle is to have honest people in there in the first place, where it would never occur to them not to report it the way that you're supposed to. And it would never occur to those people to say, well, it's not happening at this moment, and so just shut up.
Yeah, but so when you're saying when you're saying we're not going to let this happen anymore, this is not because of some new avenue of accountability. It is that you're talking about affecting the outcome of elections long term. And, I would submit to you that we have a lot of work to do in that department, because I'm watching the viewings on our candidate events, and we've got a couple of them that are up around 375 apiece. The rest are below that, and unless there's a lot more people involved, you're going to have a hard time getting to that desired place you want to be.
Well, many of us have many times, you and I have said to the audience that we have, please don't let it stop with you. At least talk to your neighbor. Tell somebody else about what's happening here. Because, of course, there's going to be people who haven't a clue what's happening, and they're not even going to vote. Then there are people who say, well, really, how bad can it be? I mean, he's a jolly old guy, and this is really not that awful. It's looking us straight in the face and lying to us. That's the part that bothers me the most. And we just simply should not allow that. Another example is the time, and we've talked about this on the show, where Cheryl Walker is trying to explain something that they were allowing to happen, and she had a piece of paper in her hand, and she's reading. This one always gets me.
That's
she's
one of my
reading
favorite
from.
ones.
Go ahead.
I said that's one of my favorite examples.
She's reading from the piece of paper. And that's not what that piece of, well, it may be what she scribbled down, but that's not the law.
Yes, I'm looking at a piece of paper going, yeah, and I forget exactly what the law was, but it was like she was theoretically reading an ORS.
That's right.
And
the weird part about it is, Mike, another weird part about it is she actually quoted the exact ORS, and as I remember, even the page.
Mm.
Well, would you think that we'd never go look that up to see if you're telling the truth?
Thanks for the reference, Cheryl. You know, the
Yeah,
next
and
time
that's
you're
not what
doing
it
this,
said.
leave out the page and you know.
It wasn't even close. So the question I asked at the time on our show between us is, now what do you do? If you've got someone that's going to go so far that it's not a different interpretation. I Googled the words, and is and the, as I recall, were the only two words that appeared anywhere in the universe. That was what she was quoting.
Well, that might be stretching it a little bit.
Well, I
in
Googled,
terms of what Google thinks, yes.
I Googled, okay, I Googled every combination, and I couldn't find anything that even came close. Now, what do you do?
Okay, but you know what? This is an interesting thing because clearly lying is happening there. And let's define what a lie. A lie is a willful misrepresentation of the facts.
That's correct.
Okay, so you know that she is doing that in that particular case. Do you think that she is an evil person and is doing that for the purpose of deceiving people? Or in her mind, has she rationalized it? Has she justified lying about that because that's, you know, for the ultimate best good of all?
Well, is she an evil person? Is Keith Heck? Is Simon Hare? Now, a lot of people look at the 4 strikes that Simon Hare has had, and, well, you know, boys will be boys kind of thing. Okay, but the reason I combine it together with, I'm reluctant to say evil, but you recall that I got up at one of the meetings and I was talking about the fellows at the Merlin Fire District people, okay, right. The Merlin Fire guys, and she said,
County Fire.
County Fire. She said, Dale Matthews has just told you, and this was 30 seconds later. Mm-hmm. Dale Matthews has just told you that all firefighters are pedophiles.
Yes. I
what?
Recall. Well, you know, and that's the quickest available thing. And listen, I don't think that Cheryl is stupid. I think she heard exactly what you said, but here's an opportunity to take something that somebody said and spin it to be something that is universally accepted as being bad. And
but it's lunatic.
Of course.
No one would ever say that about anybody, especially since it happened in the same meeting.
It just, I mean, there's your example right there.
Of course someone would do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, I'm reluctant to say evil as well because, listen, I fall short of even my own expectations, much less those of the man upstairs, probably, in many cases. And I think, you know, we all have frailties as human beings. There's probably, it's pretty close to 50% of the people in this valley, in this county, that would agree with one of these two things. Either there is a law enforcement crisis and we have to vote in a levy, or we have to lie about there being a law enforcement fiscal emergency crisis in order to pass a levy.
Then they already lose. If they're going to pick that path, here's maybe the final example about this situation with the county commissioners. Where am I right now? I'm in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're still doing our show. Okay, so you and I are dedicated to making sure, I'm hopefully not phonetically so,
one of
but
us
dedicated to making sure that people hear the news.
Listen, Dale, you know, you can skip a show. You know, people.
No, I'm not going to do that.
People take days off on the weekends. It's okay. It really is.
Well, we're telling people what's going on, and we're doing the best that we can with videotape backup, with witnesses, with their own dang documents. We're laying it all out, and there can be a change if people accept the fact that, well, okay, that does seem to be what's happening. I don't really like it very much, but they're not only complaining, they're making suggestions about the way things can be better. Well, we have to set an example. This is the example. A little dramatic, maybe, but this is the example.
But okay. I won't further contest your notion there. Okay.
All right, next.
So the next thing here is I have the end of the weekly business session on 420. 420. How
appropriate.
Yes, appropriate that they're discussing whether or not to change zoning rules to allow agricultural uses of commercial property and buildings and things of that nature. And they're about to, they have had a discussion about that earlier, yays and nays about that. And here, Simon Hare and Cheryl Walker are going to discuss it because Keith has had to leave. And so they're going to discuss it and bring up their, potential conflicts of interest, and then they're going to vote on it. So here's that little piece.
Item 2C, approval of resolution number 2016-031 in the matter of authorizing the Josephine County Planning Director to initiate a land use application to amend the Rural Land Development Code to allow agricultural uses in industrial zones.
I'll move for approval of item 2C. Approval of resolution 2016-031.
I don't know if it's appropriate here. I have no idea, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm going to declare a potential conflict of interest because I am engaged in agricultural uses. I have looked at the industrial lands, and I do have a marijuana grow license, though I have not grown. So that being said,
I'm an investor.
Now, here's something to note before we continue with the rest of this. Once the proposal about whether or not to vote yay or nay on this thing came up, Simon instantaneously, yep, I move to approve that. Boom, let's get it done, rubber stamp it and move on.
Yes.
And then there's a long pause of silence in which Cheryl goes, well, she's probably thinking about the ultimate repercussion that maybe I better say something about this right here.
Well, and one of the reasons she's doing that is the state has also found them guilty,
right?
Guilty of conflict of interest
with the same circumstance.
They're not learning any lessons, Mike. This is why you can't send them a letter of education or give them a lecture or talk to them about proper behavior. Because as Keith says, Keith says, I'm spare me. There's no lack of integrity here. Brother, you are the very definition of it.
Well, the interesting thing is that she brings up the conflict of interest, but at the end of this, they're both going to vote yes, and they're both conflicted. They're both conflicted for the same reason, and yet they're going to vote yes on it here. Let's watch that, shall we?
And in a hemp company and might have a potential conflict of interest, although I have no knowledge if there's industrial lands that are in possession by that company. I don't know at all. I would just have EFU, but anyway, putting it out there.
Yeah, well, me too, because I'm not invested in the industrial lands, but I have looked at them.
Okay.
So, okay.
You still need a second. I think that's where you're.
I still need the second, which I'm going to be the one to second the motion. Any further discussion?
I just want to thank Mr. Black for getting this process forward, and hopefully it will help some people.
Okay. Roll call.
Commissioner Hare?
Yes.
Commissioner Walker?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, approval.
We'll move on to item 4. We're all done with that now.
If the thing is, it's incredible to me, really. I should stop being so incredulous about this. When you've come close to being found guilty of doing the wrong thing, when you've been found guilty of doing the wrong thing, when they've already said, here's what the penalty is about doing the wrong thing, should there be any more hesitation about bringing this thing up, not about voting about it, just bringing it up all together. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it is bizarre. And so, well, and some of the concern that was brought up earlier on is whether or not they should fast track this legislation, because some of these growers, they need to get on the stick and get their plants in the ground. And so, you know, there was some concern about that and how long it would take and all of these things. It's just a little odd to me. So let's say this is something that probably needs to be legislated. They need to make a determination to fill up some empty commercial space somewhere for use as a grow site. Perhaps that's legitimate or not, who knows? But you have 2 members of a 3-member board that are conflicted on this matter, potentially, although there is no direct connection. Like they said, they don't own commercial property or whatever, but there's a potential a conflict there. How do you mitigate something like that with a 3-person board and 2 people are conflicted? Does one person vote and that's it? And that makes the rule, or what's the right way of doing that?
We've talked with a number of people who've been commissioners in the past, and one of the things that they've said about a different issue is they wouldn't even get on the same elevator together. They certainly would not drive to CAJO together, and they certainly not be, because what do they have in common? And then they certainly would not be talking on CAJO, and then the host comes back on, well, we were just talking about county business. What? Really? That's against the law. And so there comes a time, and now in my opinion, it starts immediately, where you don't even look like you're breaking the law. But not only is that happening, then they do break the law, and then they say, well, give me a break, we didn't break the law. And then they know that they have, and they've been already found guilty of it. And now there's such little hesitation about just moving ahead. Really, what is your motivating factor here? Does it matter to them that their reputations, their political reputations, are down around their ankles?
Yes. You know, I think in their minds, it depends on who you talk to. You know, because if you talk to their friends, hey, everything's cool. You know,
yeah.
and you know it is in the circles that they run in. There's no, you know, they don't know the difference. You know, it's an interesting thing. We were down recording both of the Ivy candidate events down at the Cave Junction County building. And one thing that Dan Mancuso said that kind of struck me odd, he said, you know, all the people that I encounter, except for Mark Seligman, are, you know, in favor, essentially in favor, I'm paraphrasing here, of the levy, of you know, voting for more property tax money to fund the sheriff. And I'm thinking,
but can he count? There's been not just a poll, there's been votes, and the votes are the ultimate poll, or are they not?
Yes, absolutely they are. They're every voter who's registered and cares to cast their opinion. That's what you get in a poll. So that's the very best quality of a poll you could possibly ever have, are people who are the normal decision makers of an election. And they have said over and over and over and over, and they are in the majority. So it's odd. So what does that tell you? Just like in this situation with Simon and Cheryl, this guy, Dan Mancuso, has a very small circle of friends, and they all think exactly like he does. And there is no cross-pollination anywhere. He doesn't go, you know, have conversations with people. In fact, he probably shuns people who are not in favor of the levy, because he genuinely dislikes people like that. And so he's not going to, he's not even interested in, he's not interested in having conversations with those people so that he can have an understanding of why they feel that way.
When the last time that we were at a quarterly meeting with the commissioners, obviously it happens 4 times a year. He was in the background as Dan Mancuso, and when people were saying what their opinion was about the taxes, he's saying things like, "Well, that's stupid," or "That's wrong." And that it reminds me of this interview, supposed interview, that I had with the guy from the Courier. You shouldn't feel that way. Hey, why are you telling me I shouldn't feel that way? You're supposed to be interviewing me. Well, this is wrong, and that's wrong, and this is, and when do we get to win? Well, in America, if you don't win the vote, you don't get the trophy.
Right. And all these people are members of the same club.
Yes, they are.
And they all think that way. And it's sort of an elitist, arrogant, entitled attitude. And
sort of. Yeah.
That's what we have. That's what we're
doing. Well, that's why I'm saying that it's not just about passing a levy or just about because the people are gotten up and said the most about funding the sheriff are the people who didn't want the levy. They still want funding for this. No, you don't. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So if you insist on plugging up your ears and yammering, blah, 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 hey, wait a minute. Don't tell me how I should feel. Well, you should be doing this and doing that. I'm going to vote on my own, and I'm going to back up what the people say. That's not populism. That's just common sense, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you got another one for us, bud?
No, I don't.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have. And you know what? We do have we are going to have a report about what took place, and you could probably spiel on this for just a little bit as a prelude to tomorrow or a couple of days down the road program. There was a meeting at the Ivy Airport tonight in this Smoke Jumpers museum, and it's this ongoing situation where, you know, is it the well, I'm getting a little beep there.
No, you're getting a beep from me here because I'm in the hospital.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, you're not going into cardiac arrest, are you?
No, that's somebody else.
That's somebody. That's the other guy. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's the other guy.
Well, and the incredible thing to me about this is over the last several years is our last topic. We're starting to run out of time here. The incredible thing to me here is that these commissioners have done all that they can to take credit for what the Smoke Jumpers Museum has done. It used to be a fully functional Smoke Jumpers area. And they have gotten a lot of kudos from a bunch of different people for renovating that and making it possible for people to see what it was like to jump on forest fires by parachute back in the 40s.
Insanity.
Yeah, and so they've taken advantage of that. In my opinion, taken advantage of it. I saw the guy from So Ready come by and say, well, we've been here all along. And people were looking at him like, what are you talking about? He hasn't been here all along. He did try to take it. That was Smith. He did try to take advantage of that situation. Mm-hmm. And they just kind of laughed at him, you know, and then never saw him again. So with all the guff that they've given those guys out there, the latest problem has been that there have been a number of people who said, well, I don't want, you know, some people say the world's loudest helicopter. I don't want that flying over my community. Now, whether they're all right or all wrong or is a combination of both, what's happened in the meantime is when that deal didn't go through, probably the closest friend that Cheryl Walker has in county government, would be my guess, is Larry Graves, the airport's manager. Mm-hmm. And Larry Graves was hopping mad. Now, wait a minute, you're a public servant. Well, he said, you know, I would just want to spank everybody here. You want to spank everybody? What kind of public servant says such a thing? And then he came to the meeting in the little back room of the commissioners. We've got to stop these meetings in the little back room, have them all out where everybody can see them and they're televised. Anyway, he went to that meeting and he started saying things like, well, you know, the FAA doesn't like this. Really? And I'm disappointed because the Smoke Jumpers who were in the room, one of them, as I recall, is on the airport board. The rest of them were in the room. Why? They didn't stand up for us. And therefore, you know, maybe they're in a bunch of trouble. You know, that's reprisals. That's a blatant attempt to use government power to crush people that you don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't agree with them, well, that's unfortunate, but don't be threatening them with having the FAA put a stop to their wonderful plans. This is not the right way to do things. This is how far it's gotten. This is the guy that was saying to some fellow that felt that he was being overcharged, "You're trying to F me and F this and F that." Hey. And then I brought it up at the weekly business session saying that's not the right way to treat people. And when he supposedly had a lecture, he went back and said to that guy, "I've got that lecture because of you." Well, partly because of me too. And so I just want you to know I'm going to continue doing it and F this and F that. Hey. That's the kind of person who should not be in a public office. And I think we're just about out of time here on our show.
Yeah, we are. And anyway, we may have some video from the meeting that took place tonight out there. We may or we may not. I don't know. But we'll certainly have a report as to what took place. And you want to sign us off here, Dale, or you want me to do it?
Yes, I'm at Three Rivers Medical Center. And I've got people who are standing by at the moment, anxious to puncture me with things and pummel me with information.
Okay. All right.
I appreciate it. They are being very patient with me, and I'm going to try to be a good patient now. So I'm glad you could all join us for this show. A little different than usual, but it still is a very nice day when I look out the window. I'm up in the treetops.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.